Welcome to my channel. I'm Rhonda, and one of the things that I'm learning to do is to study the masters. So I want to be able to study other painters, famous painters, and learn from them. So that's some of the courses that I'm taking are helping me with that. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys was there's a flower painter, a very famous French flower painter named Eugene Petit. This is a floral painting of his that was up for auction recently. So there were some really good high quality photos of it online. So I printed them off so that I could study them. It's a vase of peonies that Eugene Petit did. And one of the peonies that I really liked was this pink one. And I just like the way he uses all these random strokes so that in the big picture here, the main painting, it looks like a peony, but when you look at it close up, you can see it's a lot of random strokes and movement painted into it. So he's painting the movement inside the peony instead of actually painting the petals. So I thought that it would be really fun to give an attempt at painting Petit's peony. Now he actually painted in oils, but I paint in acrylics. You can learn a lot on different styles and how things look and everything, even if you don't paint in exactly the same medium. You can learn a lot about color and movements and brush calligraphy and that sort of things. So I just wanted to share a little something about Petit with you, just for the interest in history. So he was a French flower painter. He lived between 1839 and 1886. And so he was born in Paris, and he specialized in still life paintings, fruit and flowers and that sort of thing. And if you look up his paintings online, you'll also see that he painted a lot of sporting dogs, which is kind of interesting. He did paint in oils, and he was known for being the teacher of Eugene Henry Couchois, who was another very famous flower painter. I have set out here my Hansa yellow, naphtha red light, pine green, burnt sienna, phthalo blue, red violet, and white, and a cap of extender. And I'm going to do this with a number 8 fusion brush, fusion flat, because in my picture here it looks to me kind of like that's similar to the size of the strokes on there. So we will give that a try and see how it goes and what we can learn from trying Petit's peony. I have just an 8x10 board here that I'm going to paint on, and I just coated it with basically I had a gray base coat, and then I put a kind of a lighter gray with some Hansa yellow in it on top. So when I'm looking at this, it looks to me like he did his base in quite a dark, cool color. This his light's coming from this side, and so this side is his cool darks, and then this side is his lighter side. Looks like he has some depth in the center there as well. So I think I'm going to start with some dark coloring in there. So I'm going to start by taking some red violet and a little bit of the naphtha red light and mixing those two together to make my cool dark. I'm going to add a little bit of extender to keep everything a bit wetter. And I'm just going to take that and kind of base in my peony to kind of get the dark shadows. I'm just keeping it fairly soft right now because I'm not 100% sure exactly what I'm going to do with it. Now I think I'm also going to put in the white peony that Petit has beside this one. So for that, I'm going to take a little bit of white, and I'm going to make a gray for my base. So to make the gray, I'm going to put in some red violet, a little bit of phthalo blue. Now the phthalo blue is very strong, so as you can see it kind of got a little bit blue on me. So I'll put in a little burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow, And as you can see, it's still quite green, so in order to gray it down properly, I'm going to add some more red to it because the red will gray out the green. Then I'll just lighten it up, and I'll use that for my base for the white peony. It's a little difficult to see because it's very close in value to the background, but hopefully you guys can see it well enough. So now that I have them both based in, I'm going to go back and add some more cool darks to the pink peony. So I'm going to take a little bit more red violet, mix that in with my red, and I'm going to use that on the cool side of the peony to just darken everything down a little bit. I'm also going to take some of that darker color and add more depth into the center because it looks like that's what he's done in his peony. Now I'm going to make a lighter pink, so I'm taking some Naphthol Red Light and some white, and I'm going to add some more red violet to that as well, because that's kind of what the color looks like to me. And once I have a color that I think is about right, I'll check it with the paper here, and that looks like about the right color there. So I'm going to just start by stroking in some petals and see how it looks. I'll use my finger to move the paint around as well. Now it kind of looks to me a little bit more like what Petit was doing a lot of small strokes with the paint and just a lot of movements. So that's what I'm going to start trying to do here. Instead of painting actual petals, I'll just put in different movements with my brush. It's a little more spontaneous and not quite what I'm used to, so it takes a bit of extra practice to do that. I'll vary my tones a little bit as well, lighten them up in places and see what I can accomplish. One thing that Petit was quite famous for was his color marks. So he would have lots of small marks of color throughout his paintings, or little sparks of color. So that's what I'm going to try and loosen up enough to capture here. Now you can see I've covered over most of my center, that dark center, so I'm going to have to put that back in after. While I'm painting here, I thought I'd just talk to you a little bit about practicing. It's something that I talk about a lot. It's just trying new things, practicing, and not being afraid to try something you've never tried before. Doing this here, trying to do a study of a painting done by a master, is something that I haven't really done before. It's something that I'm starting to learn in the courses that I'm taking, but it's not something that I'm practiced at. But there was a time when I would have been too afraid to try it because, well, what if it didn't turn out? But now I freed myself up to actually practice and learn. And that's the only way that you're going to learn, is to actually try it, to get over your fear of trying things and just do it. And that's one thing that I find is very freeing in my art now, is the ability to just try it. It's just a board and it's a bit of paint. And if it doesn't turn out, I don't have to show anybody, and it can just sit in a drawer somewhere, or I can paint over it. But I still am giving it a try and learning something as I go. So you can see here now I'm adding in some dark back into the center and carrying that dark through to the bottom cool side as well. I like to try, and when I make one tone, I like to carry it through the the flower a little bit so that it's not just isolated to one area. Now I'm going to go back in and model a little more with the pinks and some more white, and try and put a few more sparks of color, that light color, to add a little bit more depth to the peony, because it's gotten a bit flat on me as well as I've been adding more color strokes. I'm adding some more light to the outer edges of the petals on the outside, because my light would come around and probably hit those edges. It also adds just a little bit more contrast with the cool darks that are in closer underneath the peony. You can see I'm using a lot of paint. I'm keeping it quite thick. Petit did paint in oils, and I'm painting in acrylics, so I wanted to keep the paint thicker and wetter so I could try and just see if I can emulate what he's doing. So I'm going to actually let it tack up a little bit though, because my paint is really wet, and I'm not really used to painting wet on wet too much yet. It's something I'm learning. So I'm going to move over to the white peony, and I'm just going to use a gray, basing off that base color that I had created. And I'm going to keep this peony a little bit looser than the other one, because it's just kind of sitting in the background. So I start with my darkest gray, and then I'm adding a lighter gray, and now I'm adding some white onto it, kind of generally following the idea of what it looks like Petit did to me, but not trying to be a direct copy, because you can't actually directly copy anything. It's pretty difficult to directly copy it. So now I'm taking some Hansa yellow and some Naphthol red, and I'm putting in the center on that peony, and it's looking a little bit on the bright side to me, so I think I want to take a bit of green and gray it down. And there I actually put in too much green, so I'm gonna have to add more yellow and red again. But I want to keep it a little bit more grayed down so that it doesn't pop forward as much. Keep it more of a brownish yellow. I'll throw even a little bit of burnt sienna in, and that'll kind of take the brightness out of it, so that that peony will sit behind the pink one, which is the center of interest in this particular set. I'm not going to do too much else to that peony other than adding in a little bit more white. I did also get a little bit of pink in it from my brush, and that's not really a problem because it just adds more harmony to the painting. Trying to go in and add some more white strokes on the top, because it looks to me like that's what Petit did. But I'm still not keeping them pure white. I'm having them about a value 9. So now I'm going to go back into my pink peony, and I'm going to add some more of those lights in there. You can see the color here is approximately the color that Petit used. It's not a pure white. Again, it's about a value 9 with the pink in it. I'm going to use that to add some more highlights to the areas where the light is hitting the peony, to try and keep it a little bit more three-dimensional and not let it get flat. Again, I think the light would be hitting these outer edges, which if you look at Petit's painting, he has light on those tips of those petals as well. Now there's this one stroke in the center of his peony that I really like, so I'm going to try and emulate that by taking just some red violet, maybe mix in a little bit of my red, and just put a bold dark stroke in there. And it's not quite doing what I want, so I'm going to make it actually a little darker by adding some blue to make more of a purple, and then mixing that in with the violet to kind of have a more purpley violet, and just make a real bold dark stroke in there. And then I'm going to add some of that to my shadow side as well to carry that color through. And I need to put out a little bit more red violet. I'm using my Heritage Multimedia paints again, and I'll put a link in the description where you can purchase them. If you're enjoying this video, make sure that you like and subscribe, and tell me what your favorite flower is, and if you've ever tried to paint it, and what lessons you learned from painting it. So I'm going to go in and make that darker violet a little bit more red violet again by going over it now with some red violet. And then I'm going to add in some more pink tones on the edges so that it doesn't all look like one solid mass of color. When I want to make a little bit of a warmer pink, I'll use the Naphthol Red Light because it's a warmer red. And if I want the pink to be cooler, I'll use the red violet. Paying attention to the temperature of your paints really has an effect on your painting, and adds dimension to it and a lot more interest. So one of the things that I like to do as well is sometimes I'll pick up my painting and I'll hold it further away from me so I can see from a distance with the optical blending that your eyes do what it looks like and whether it is having the effect that I'd like it to have. And this is looking pretty good for me so far. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to take some green burnt sienna and a little bit of red violet to cool it off, and I'm going to do some negative painting around the peony to just shape up my edges and put in just a little bit of background movement. If you look closely at Petit's painting, he put a lot of movement into his background, and this is by no means going to be a finished painting that I'm doing here. It's just a quick study, but I thought I'd put in a little bit of background movement just to see if I could kind of capture that feeling. Now, since Petit did paint in oils, I'm assuming that he probably did his background first and then went in and painted the flowers on top of it. But I don't have a problem with doing it either way, especially with acrylics, because they dry a lot faster, so I don't have to wait for things to necessarily dry for days before I can put on another layer. I'm gonna try and make some of these leaves that Petit put on there just to see if I can push the white peony back a little bit more with the leaves on top. I'll add a little bit more green to it just to add some color interest, change up my tones. You can see as soon as you add something in front of the peony, it really pushes it back further in the painting. I'm going to try and keep my colors up on the light side of the peony, more of a yellow-green, a lighter color, because the light would also be hitting those leaves as well as the peony itself. So again, you always want to be paying attention to where your light source is so that you can reflect that in all the areas of your flowers, your leaves, even your background. Here I'm taking some more green and violet and putting in some shadows on the bottom part of the leaves just to add a little bit more interest there as well and provide a little bit more contrast up against that light side of the peony so that the peony itself pops forward more, because the peony is the center of interest. I'm doing a lot of short strokes in this painting, which is something that I don't normally do, but that's another thing that I'm learning from this is how to use a lot of little short interest strokes and movement instead of doing a lot of longer strokes, and it's quite interesting to try that. It definitely takes a different feel to your brush to do that. So now that I've put some background in, I can kind of see areas on my peony where I might want to lighten things up, add a few more highlights, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go back in and do that again. I want to make these edges of the petals a little bit lighter so that they stand out against that green background. And I'm also going to add some more red violet to the cool side to just keep everything temperature-wise a lot cooler over there. Keeping that cool area around the bottom of the peony there really tends to round it out a little bit more if you've got your cool darks down there and then your lighter petals where the sun would be hitting them, or the light would be hitting them. Just trying to add in a few more sparks of color here, or sparks of light, just to try and emulate what Petit does and see if I can make it look the way I want to. And I think that's looking pretty good for my peonies here. I could play with this all day if I'm not careful. I'll maybe make a few more changes here, just a few more strokes that I can see that I'd like to add. But again, it would be easy to just play with it all day when really I think I'm pretty happy with how it looks. So I would say with this peony painting, the main thing that I learned was basically how to use small strokes to create interest in the flower. That was something, and a lot of movement to create interest in the flower. That was something that I haven't really done much of in my flowers, to that extent anyway. I paint a lot of roses, and I've been working towards being a little bit looser with my brush
And this really taught me to kind of free up my hand and just be more casual and loose with it, using a lot of small strokes instead of drawing in actual petals. So that was quite an interesting thing for me to learn in this painting. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and you can see the products that I used down in the description. And again, just tell me what your favorite flower is and if you've ever tried to paint it before. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you on the next one.